All right, we're here with Larry and a beautiful looking Chrysler, and we're going to turn this over to Larry. And Larry said he's only had this car for a week, but we're going to let Larry tell us all about it.
This is a 1940. This is a 1948 Chrysler Windsor convertible. It's been made into a street rod. It's got a 383 Magnum engine and a 4-speed rear end, all out of a 67 Dodge Charger. It drives down the road beautiful. It's a California car. It was brought in from California 2 years ago.
Wow.
And yeah, everything works on it great. It's a wonderful car. I just bought it a week ago, and I love it.
You bought it off a local owner?
In Michigan.
In Michigan,
wow. That guy had it delivered from California to him.
You didn't drive up and drive it home, did you?
No. I trailered it at home. Just to make sure of everything, you know.
All right,
but it runs down the road sweet, I'll tell you.
She's a sweet-looking ride, Larry.
Yeah, it's kind of unusual.
Yes, it is. But we appreciate you taking the time and speaking with us and showing us your car, telling us about it.
All right.
Okay, thank you, Larry. Yes. All right, we're here with Lynn at the Springfield Car Garage, and Lynn has got a whole bunch of cars here. And Lynn, how about you tell us about some of these cars?
Well, I would be proud to do that. And since some of them are unique, we figured a few years ago, since nobody will ever challenge us on it, we can lie like a rug about it, because who else is going to know? But I'll try to be as honest as a Smith can be. And if I could begin, this and the car beside it are both George Barris constructions. And George Barris was thought of as the king of customizers. After the war, he and his brother started this thing that turned into custom cars and cars being personalized to individuals. And became fairly famous doing it. Did a lot of the movie star and television cars like the Batmobile, the Munstermobile, the Dukes of Hazzard. So to have two George Barris cars here. But this is started out as a 1958 Corvette, and a customer, a client, wanted a unique car done to be representative of his business. And so this was George Barris's creation on a 58 Corvette. The influence of the war, jet planes, we know how during the 50s we went to fins and cars that had the look of fighter planes. So this has, again, fins, ductwork. The nose of it kind of looks like the inlet of some of the jet fighters of the era. And that's pretty much the history of this, and its claim to fame was it's unique, but it was a George Barris creation.
Okay, Al, was this kind of like a regular street car? I mean, something you could drive like every day if you wanted
and
to?
And you can, and could now. It has, and over the years, a bit of evolution. It has one of the more famous and dependable 327, 350 horse, 4-speed cars. Other than being fairly difficult to get in because they're so flat, and the seats are high, the attention-getting aspect, I think, makes up for the discomfort of having to drive the damn thing. I think that works with women now and then. You know, some that are pretty high maintenance might be attention getters, but you might not want to drive it across the state.
Okay, now what about this one beside it?
Do we want... the mechanics are pretty much straightforward of 1958. It's a 327, 350 horse. They were very dependable. It was a little bit newer than what they had in 58. They only had 283. The 327s came out in 1962. And so over its life, it had been updated, and right now it has a 350 or a 327 350. Only if you can shoot it. You want the hood up to see the? I can do that. It is a 4-speed. It was a fairly popular combination when they got into the Stingray Corvettes in '63, and but a 327 350 4-speed was a boy's dream in the day. And as you can see, and part of our heritage, we always says if it don't run, chrome it. So even though it does run pretty good, it meets the standard of it's pretty. So even if it didn't, you still wouldn't be ashamed of owning it.
All right, Lynn, tell us about this beauty.
Well, this is a little fancier, if you're kind. This also is a George Barris creation, and it is a 1972 Bugatti, and it's based on a 1972 Lincoln Continental. And George's treatment was the headlight system, all the pinstriping is real gold. The side pipes and running boards are not, well, the pipes are not functional, but in creating the car, they used what's called a pearlescent paint that just has a whole different look. The interior has, they actually bought Persian rugs and adapted them for the carpeting in the car. It has a television. It has a lot of creature comforts. We believe somewhere there might be even restroom facilities, but we're not sure. But they had, and I'm not sure you can, I will gesture, but if I open this door, there is a big slab of Grecian marble. And it makes the door so heavy that it becomes a weapon. It is just kind of over the top. And a television, interior lights, creature comforts. It's hard to describe much beyond that, but they made 14 of them. This car's bragging rights is that it's number one. It was the prototype, so one of 14. And we're lucky enough to have it in the Vernus collection.
Showing us the inside of this beauty.
Very,
Okay, start now. All right, Lynn, how about showing us the inside of this beauty?
very good. I'd be proud to, assuming I have the strength to open the door. George spared very little on his design. This is a hunk of Grecian marble that makes the door a potential weapon. It's so heavy. They carried this along into the door pull, and but just to have pieces of marble in the car. The other thing that was a little unique, or at least I found, was they actually purchased Persian rugs to adapt and fit into the carpeting that is part of this car. From this angle, you can probably see the television and some of the other treatment to take the glare off the dash. But a lot of detail, the chrome work, the extended rocker, and the simulated side pipes to keep the theme of kind of the 30s and big luxury cars. I think that was their purpose.
All right, Lynn, why don't you tell us about this classic Davis here?
I would be proud to do that. It is, as you said, a Davis. They are only made, or were only made in 1948. So if somebody says they got a 49 Davis, they're pulling your leg. But the Davis was made in Southern California. The guy had this idea of kind of a clean sheet of paper to do this thing. It's all aluminum. It's very aerodynamic. It is, they called this model, only made one model, the divan, which is another piece of furniture you sometimes find in your living room, like a couch. So the divan was used because they advertised you could sit 4 adults side by side in this relatively wide car. It is 3-wheeler, single wheel in the front. It's got a Dana differential and rear wheel drive with a drive shaft, 3-speed transmission, and almost all of them were made with Continental or Hercules 4-cylinder industrial engines. 2 variances, and we happen to have one here. One was built with a Ford Flathead V8. This one was built with a Nash 6-cylinder inline, and Wayne Carini happens to have the Ford V8, and my friend Myron Vernus owns a collection with this, has the Nash. There is a rivalry. Carini used to say, mine's better because I have 8 cylinders. We would respond by, ours is better, we have 35 more horsepower. And as it worked out, this spring at Amelia Island, some fools set up a drag race on a little airport down there because they had 3 Davises there, one from the Lane Museum, Wayne Carini's, and ours. So you are in the presence of the world's fastest Davis because we cleaned their clock. And it was no doubt due to my tuning, but anyhow, this particular car has the 6-banger. If you would like, and it was very aerodynamic, there is a side story that you might find interesting or be bored to death. There's traffic. Mr. Davis ended up going to jail, not unlike the Tucker story. Wow. Turned out he played a little loose with investors' money. They didn't like it. He gets sent off to the Hooskow. Well, finally he's up for parole, and they decide the conditions are you do anything in the automotive world, we're putting you back in jail. But if you're willing to give that up, we might let you out. He got out. He then went into the carnival business. And if you look at this car from a profile and just think about it, with a carnival background, you'll know what he did. And so I'll let you know. This will blow my whole spiel at car shows because now the whole world will know. But he made bumper cars. And if you look at this thing, you can't help but see a bumper car there. Just the look of it. Yes. And with that in mind, I doubt if I can hold an audience to promise to never tell anybody, so I'm done. If you would like, and if it's in frame, maybe I could open the hood and you'll be able to get a view of the 3-wheel system along with the engine. May I give my chief assistant the microphone? Shall we start back with, start here? Very good. I'm back on. We had been talking about the size of the radiator. Maybe they were thinking about putting a much larger engine in it, but didn't, thank goodness. This is the unique one of one that has the Nash six-cylinder. Very basic, simple engine, did the job. In fact, since there were 3 of these at Amelia Island this spring, and some fool set up a drag race at the airport, and Wayne Carini had his V8. The Lane Museum had their freshly restored 4-banger, and we had our 6-banger, and we cleaned their clock, thank you very much. So we're in the presence of the world champion drag racing 1948 Davis. And where should they send the letters? Anyhow, you get the idea of utilization of space. You can see kind of where the headlights sit. They're almost in this plane to show out through these aerodynamic holes. They must have had marginal brakes because it has very large horns. We can see the remnants in here of motor mount pads that probably were for the Hercules or Continental 4-bangers. But in one part of their original one, and the one that the Lane Museum has now, they had provisions at each corner to hydraulically raise the vehicle, so it made it a little easier for somebody to service the front tire. And you even needed that because the rear tires are tucked up under the quarters, again for aerodynamics and styling. It is, you look at it, at some point it's aluminum, but this kind of material, nobody was thinking about weight savings on the front suspension. And having driven it, the 3-wheel stability is not terrible. You adjust to it, you kind of remember that it's a 3-wheeler, and you remember your life on a tricycle, and you didn't want to be the one to put it on its side. But Myron is a trusting friend, and he lets me fiddle with it. I'm wondering if in the group we have here, might you see something or have a question that...
Do you have trouble with getting gasoline for this? Would have been red gas when it was made.
That's a good point, and the question, should it be reset? Do we have problems because these were engines that had lead in the fuels, and when they took it out, our good old EPA at work, we started having a problem with valve life and things like this. This is always a bit of a concern with some of these old pieces of antiquity, because we either now and then put in, the lead additive, the tetraethyl lead, thinking down the road. But I guess a fellow like myself, the mechanic, would say, oh, I'd rather run leaded fuel. It's not the octane we need, it is the lubrication, and it's help keeping valves alive. So we think about that in some of our old cars, but in truth, none of them get a lot of road time. So we believe that we're doing minimal damage. We haven't had personal problems. If anything, the problem we have with cars not utilized a lot is the ability of the fuels of today to stabilize and not turn into silly putty and some other chemistry project that really screws things up. So keeping fresh gas in it is a help. Chrysler found in some of their technology that the tetraethyl lead was cumulative, so putting a little bit in now and then helped. It was like taking a little bit of medicine to put off a bigger problem. And so we're hoping that the guys were right back in the days. So we try to put that additive in there. But we've not had specific problems, and a quarter mile at a time we'll be all right.
Now, what was the top speed on these cars, Lynn?
With every, I think they thought this would run in the 60s. We found a little chart somebody had made up, but we think they lied. They talked about horsepower and some other things. It was a little like a window placard that we think anybody that was probably much over 50 should have a striped suit and a cape, because I don't think it would be, I felt more nervous driving this at 50 than I did at my Roadster at 150. So not even taking into account the tires that they made back then.
Well, we sure do appreciate you taking the time to show us this car.
Well, as long as your standards are low, I'm your man. And so I'm honored that you would have let me do it.
All right. All right, Lynn, it looks like we saved the best for last, and we want you to tell us about your, your favorite car here.
Why, thank you. I would be proud to. And last isn't always the worst place to be, but it's certainly been part of my life since actually 1968 is when we started putting it together. And it is, without hopefully boring you to death, it was built as an A street roadster from the beginning, which was one of the older drag racing categories. And I know you probably have it on your calendar, but 49 years and 3 days ago was the anniversary of me and this car winning the IHRA All-American Nationals in Bristol, Tennessee. Everything went well, and I was hard to live with for a while, but it worked, and it's all kind of old school. And at the time, cars like this, we called them high boys, the hot rods out of the war years and into the 50s and 60s, tended to be high and short. They were wild to watch go down the track, which made them fun, and I like it a lot. To which a buddy once said at dinner, "Did you ever see your car go down the track?" And I said, "No." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because you wouldn't drive it if you did." And but I still have. Anyhow, it's a 1923 Model T Roadster. The body is fiberglass. We finagled original steel fenders from a very kind collector who would have never let me out of his door if he knew it was going on a race car. So we kind of implied it wasn't, but the fenders are original Model T Ford fenders. It was painted in the early 70s, this paint scheme, and it's held up pretty well being a lacquer paint job over all these years and being hauled around the country on an open trailer. I am not artistic. A friend who had painted this came in one day as he was doing the work, and he said, "Smith, I figured out what we're going to do." So I'm confessing I have pirated this from Playboy. Way back in the early 70s, they had done an article on Craig Breedlove, assault on the land speed record. And this article, to which one person here said, "You mean, you kind of make the case that they actually do read the articles in Playboy?" And we did. But he had, the illustrator had this Captain America's theme over the text as the article started, and it so moved the custom painter that he said, I'm going to work it into the logo. And my company's name's Smith & Company, so hence that's where that came from. Now, if that hasn't put the audience to sleep, I have more. This is a 420, it's a 426 Hemi. It's now 430 cubic inches. It's an aluminum rod. It is an extremely high compression ratio, like 14:1, which made it ideal when we got it out of mothballs to convert it, since we had Hilborn injection, to alcohol. So it runs on a methanol now. Hilborn was really helpful on helping us convert it from gasoline to alcohol. And it makes somewhere in the 800 horsepower range. The next kind of novelty is, back in the day, B&M had come up with a thing called a clutch flight. It was a 727 torque flight transmission that everybody and his brother had, but instead of a torque converter, it has a clutch. So I can launch it and drive it like a stick shift car. The transmission won't shift until I move the selector. So you put it in low, you push down the clutch, you fire it up, and so you can launch it at any RPM you want. 8,000 RPM, drop the clutch, and it's gone. And hopefully when it comes down, you're looking at the end of the track and not the spectators or whatever. But they were used in some of the AFX cars of the 60s. That was the precursor to funny cars. But it was a big deal to have a clutch flight transmission that worked. And so the cars always had that. It's got the old, truly from the old days, an Olds Pontiac differential with a 514 gear in it. And so it accelerates pretty hard. And the best it went, and probably the limit of this combination, is 940s, maybe a little quicker, but a bit under 150 mile an hour and a quarter mile. And it is exciting to drive. I find old guys and little kids like it a lot. It has been part of my existence for a long time, and one of those things I'm so glad I kept, because I really like it, and I'm glad it's mine. And we happen to have it here at a regional car show for some friends, and still I find old guys and little kids like it, which is good for me. Do you by chance see anything that you go, what in the world is that? Or why?
Well, I think you answered the one question I was going to ask you is what time and what speed did were you running when you won in Bristol?
Yes, we just cracked the national record. It's funny how you remember absolutely useless data, but it was running 950s, and the national record was 960. And so that particular day, everything was working. And it was against a new style car, the ones that were quite low to the ground. They had 4 links instead of ladder bars. It just should have cleaned my clock, but it didn't. And I wasn't going to give him another chance. And again, to think that was 49 years ago.
Now, with no windshield or anything, it must feel like you're going 400 miles an hour.
Well, just, the way we are, everybody in racing is hell-bent on following the rules. So this car, being a street roadster class car, had to have a windshield.
Oh, did you?
So this happened to qualify as a windshield. It had to have, since it was a street roadster, lights. They didn't say they had to work. So in the front and on the back is a something resembling a light. In 1923, a Model T Ford had only a right-hand door. So to be legal, there is a bolt-in piece of, well, it's shaped like a 23T door, but that met the requirement for the body design, unlike the newer cars that are sometimes molded into one piece. And so with that in mind, we followed the rules, and that's here because you need to have a windshield. But you're right, you do catch a lot of air. And if I noticed if you turn your head, the helmet drafts, and you know it's hard, it takes a bit of grunt to get your head looking straight again. So I didn't look at the scenery very much after the first couple times of turning my head. I figured that they'll have to take care of themselves over there.
Now, when was the last time you ran this car?
Last year.
Really?
Yeah, it's kind of ready to go, probably more than me. I think you get to a point that a couple things over the years that's happened. About 2 years ago, I gave myself a concussion when a wheelie bar broke, and I think I'm the oldest example of shaken baby syndrome. But it rang my bell, and you start thinking about responsibilities that people have beyond themselves. And you know, I guess I wouldn't want Bob to have to take care of me for. Bob's a girl, by the way. Bob would have to take care of my dead butt for or injured butt for a long time. So you know, you think about it a little differently, but your mind says you can still do it. You want to race?
No, sir.
Oh, all right.
No, but I do appreciate you taking time to share with us.
It's a compliment you would ask. I thank you. I hope it met what you'd hope to accomplish. And again, as long as your standards are low, I'm your man.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Lynn. We appreciate you. Hi, we're here with Dennis in a beautiful Dodge pickup truck, and we're going to turn it over to Dennis. And Dennis, why don't you tell us about your pickup?
Well, it's a 1959 Dodge. It came out of North Carolina. It belonged to a fire department. And I basically did everything. The firewall behind the engine, I wanted to move the engine back, so I bought a wheelbarrow pan from one of the building stores. I welded the wheelbarrow in it so I could move my engine back.
Wow. And you did the painting too?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
It's really beautiful.
I did not do the
mural
artwork under the hood.
But you did a very, very nice job. Now, how long have you had this truck, Dennis?
32 years.
32 years. Well, how often do you drive it, Dennis?
Just through the summer, I go to some of the car shows and
Shows.
drive around a little bit. But it's a pretty fun old ride.
Yes, it is. It sure looks like it. It's a very nice looking old ride.
Well, thank you.
What's the reason you moved the engine back?
I want to get more weight to the rear of the truck, so get the weight off the front end. So I moved it back. It's had just about everything done to it. I don't know if you can notice the size of the tire on the back of it, but it's got a pretty healthy set of tires.
Yes, it does.
And it's got a 440 engine in it. Actually, I shortened the bed on it too. The bed was a real long bed on the truck.
Yeah.
I shortened that. I shortened it by 18 inches. So there's a lot of work in this old truck.
It sure is a beauty.
Well, thank you.
We appreciate you taking the time, Dennis, to talk with us and share. Hi, we're here at the car show with Frank, and Frank has a beautiful Corvette here, and Frank's going to tell us a little bit about it.
Well, it's a 57 Corvette, not the original motor. It's got a 427 in it. It's only got about 14,000 miles on it. Come out of Louisiana, and probably before that it was Texas. It actually raced this car. I got pictures of it where they raced it. It was a race car at one time. Came with a hard top, same color, but I don't put the hard top on. I like the convertible.
And how long have you had it, Frank?
I've had it going on 2 years now.
Yeah.
Had it shipped in from Louisiana. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and you say it's a 57?
It's a 57.
57, she's...
The year I was born. That's why I wanted a 57. Also, I like the looks of them.
Yeah.
58, they went to the dual headlights, and I like the single headlight deal.
All right. Now, this original paint on it?
It's original paint. But like I said, not the original motor.
Not the original motor.
No, it's got a big block. Biggest thing they had back in 57 was a 283.
283.
This has got a 427 in it. It's a beast.
All righty. Okay, Frank. All right, Frank. We appreciate you taking the time to speak with us.
No problem.
All right. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Frank, you got...
Okay, we're here with Dale with a very, very nice looking old Studebaker, and we're going to turn it over to Dale and let Dale tell you a little bit about his Studebaker.
Thank you. This is a 1953 Champion. I'm 64 years old. I drove this car to high school.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. And I take it did not look like this when you drove it to high school.
No, it was a copper color back then.
Well, what all have you done to it, Dale?
It's a street rod that it was a drag car at one time. I runs low 12s. Has a small block Chevrolet engine, turbo 400 tranny, Ford 9-inch rear end with Chrysler super stock springs. So it was a fun little ride. 1.6 60-foot time, and would do the quarter mile in the low 12s.
All right. Sounds a little bit like a Johnny Cash car.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you know, I mean.
A runner?
No, got it one part at a time.
Oh, right. Okay, I got you.
Yeah, you got what, a Chevy engine?
Yes.
You got a Ford rear end?
Yes.
And
Chrysler springs.
Chrysler springs? Wow.
Yeah, it's a hodgepodge of a little bit of
A
everything.
little bit of everything. Well, it's a very nice looking car, Dale.
Thank you very much.
Hi, we're at the Springfield Center Car Show here in Springfield, Ohio, and we're looking at a 65 Mustang that has been restored, and she's a beauty, and I'm going to turn you over to its owner and let him tell you a little bit about her.
Well, I've had this car for about 40 years, and it has about a 7-year restoration. I finished the restoration about 2000, 1999. But it's all standard, right out of the factory. 289 motor, automatic transmission, runs good. Well, I had it all rebuilt. But that's about the story of this car.
Well, she's very beautiful. Your buddy over here tells me you're 90 years old and still doing this.
I am 90,
Wow. That's... You're never too old then.
Well, I used to have a body shop.
Oh, okay.
And that's where this came out, that body shop.
Okay. Well, we appreciate you bringing it out and letting us take a look at it,
Well,
sir.
I appreciate you looking at it and commits to talk.
All right. Well, you have a good day,
Yeah,
sir.
thank you.
All right. Thank you.